so the world must be. But when the man awakes to put the world to sleep, who can know the shape of space and time? We may never know. Watch the small ones fall in line like clockwork every time, knowing to what we claim to know of things we could never hold. Such things come only from the mind, and the blind will lead the blind. As the world turns, so the truth must be spun. If the known cannot be unknown, then you must carry on. Who can know the shape of space and time? Well, we may never know. Watch the small minds fall in line like clockwork every time, knowing to what they claim to know. And what do we have to show? Such things come only from the mind, and thus the blind will lead the blind. Such things come only from the mind, and the blind will lead the blind.
We're looking at the Chiricahua Mountains, and we're about to head into the Chiricahua National Monument in southeastern Arizona. I tend to have mixed feelings about these national monuments. This one here was forcibly taken away. The most recent residents were forcefully evicted through a campaign of genocide, to put it lightly. There is a labyrinth of rock formations here, which provides protection, gauntlets, hiding places. Like a citadel, these mountains were a fortress. This was one of the last hiding places from the US federal military. You were actually given prize money by the government in Arizona if you brought back the scalp of an Indian. An example of one of the residents at the time would have been the man nicknamed by the non-natives as Geronimo was Enemy Number 1. He was considered a terrorist. His family, his cousins, his relatives, his parents, they were labeled as terrorists. The Apaches were the very last of the Indians in the United States to be eradicated. I say these national parks cause me to have mixed feelings because of the way aesthetically, legally, visually, restrictively, there is a military presence occupying the accessibility, the experience.
You can hear them if you want to. Sing long. You can hear them if you want to. Sing long. Sing long.
It's like an occupying force has deliberately executed an increasing campaign to limit and almost entirely eliminate freedoms, options, and they're instead quarantining the human experience into an overly constrained, rationalized, curbed circumference of something that aesthetically feels boxed in, shackled, confined, with signs that say no overnight parking, no camping, no overnight parking, no camping, no overnight parking, no camping. If you do happen to get a ticket in one of these national parks, they are federal, and if you do not pay that ticket, you will have a federal warrant for your arrest. So there is one campground in this national park. The park is huge, and ironically, the campground is tiny. Each empty parking lot throughout the whole park says no overnight parking, no camping. I was hoping for there to be more than one campground, maybe a few campgrounds. But the feds, have limited it to only one. You have one choice. The one campground inside this vast park, it's tiny. It's about the size, no joke, of a McDonald's parking lot, and it's called Bonita, which means pretty or cute. It's not so cute. It costs $20 for one campsite, which makes 0 sense because if you're in an RV with 20 people or a motorcycle with one person, it costs $20.
Put me in the poster, write a song, read it on to get along. Put me in a sign, walking down the line, telling me you know it's wrong. About what you did. Put it in a poem. Tell them what you know, tell them what you know is wrong. I see the light, I see the light, the light, the light, I shed the light. Won't you give it? Make a poster, tell them one night, tell them one night. Write a poem, tell them all the truth, tell them what to do.
5 minutes ago, when I was still in the national park, this is my thoughts. As you roll through the tiny campground, even within the already constrained parking lot sized quarantine area, the quote hosts of the campground in their RV parked in spot 16 have their fucking gas generator running, humming, buzzing loudly with exhaust, noise, fumes. If that's not bad enough, the fucking volume on their TV is raging, as if to compete with the already invasive white noise of their fucking generator. And on top of this, have actually quarantined inside the quarantine. They have actually dragged the picnic tables from each tiny campsite to block the small entryway to each tiny campsite driveway. And they put photocopied signs on each picnic table saying, "Do not park or camp here." What the hosts have created is 6 or 7 families, maybe even only 5 families, camping on top of each other. Each family could have elbow room from one another, but instead, they, the hosts, made a quarantine inside the quarantine. The irony is the vastness. There was only one vehicle that was on the road. It was a school bus. That was it. There were 0 cars on the road. Same with this park on this day. 0 cars on the road. I was actually surprised to see 6 or 7 or 5 families camping in Bonita. I did not want to cram myself into the quarantine inside the quarantine, especially not for $20. It should be free to sleep outside. So I drove outside of the National Monument and camped illegally on private land. All this land and fenced private. It's either occupied by a military force or it's fenced and private for cattle. When complaining to my brother, he said it right. It's like they are still waiting for the Apaches to attack.
And I see